Have you ever felt invisible in your family? As if your presence suddenly became a mere courtesy and your absence a relief? At 78, after a life dedicated to others, I learned what it means to be excluded by those who should be the most hospitable. And it all started with an unexpected call. "We're canceling dinner, Mom." But what awaited me that night was more than just loneliness. It was the painful revelation of a lie and the awakening of a strength I didn't even know I still possessed. This story is about betrayal, yes, but it's also about dignity, about a new beginning, about looking in the mirror and finally deciding to make decisions for yourself. What if I told you that sometimes the biggest turning point in life doesn't come in your 20s or 30s, but in your 70s? That's when the world becomes quietest and the truth speaks loudest, when everything you've accepted out of habit starts to bother you. In that silence, I heard my heart crying out for help, and I decided to stop ignoring it. The truth is, we only realize our own worth when it's tested, and sometimes liberation comes precisely from abandonment. I thought I wouldn't survive alone, but only when I was alone did I discover who I truly was. There, in oblivion, I found the opportunity to remember myself. It's strange how much silence can betray us. When no one seeks us out, we finally learn to find ourselves. Without hugs, I felt the weight of my own belly. And strangely, there, in the deepest pain, the seed of my healing sprouted. It was time to stop surviving, to live. After Antonio's departure, the house became too big and too quiet. The children, who had previously visited me frequently, became brief visits, always with a request. I smiled and said, "Sure, my son." But inside I felt irrelevant. Widowhood revealed a truth. She was useful, but no one wanted her. Little by little, I disappeared from her daily life. Vacations went unnoticed. Birthdays became obligatory texts. The worst part wasn't the loneliness, but realizing my value was limited to what I could offer. From loving mother to a kind of emotional ATM, I realized people only came to me when something was missing. A favor, money, a solution. Never a sincere question about how I was. And the more I shared, the more they ignored me. I began to wither away without anyone noticing. Even the simplest things changed. I stopped gardening and cooking my favorite dishes. What once brought me joy became useless habits. And then came the cruelest feeling of old age, that you've become a burden and no longer belong to the family. The cruelest thing about abandonment is that it doesn't always come with slammed doors. Sometimes it comes silently, in the absence of an invitation, in the forgetting of a date. That's how we realize we've become disposable. And what hurt me the most was accepting that I had allowed this to happen for years in the name of being a good mother. A few days before my birthday, my son called and told me dinner was canceled. No explanation, no other invitation. Just a "we'll see." I swallowed hard, as always. I pretended to understand, but something inside me knew something was wrong. The night of the canceled dinner, my neighbor casually remarked, "I saw your family on the way to Riverbend, all dressed up." I felt a chill. It was my husband's favorite restaurant. On my birthday. And without me? I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But then I began to see the connections. My daughter-in-law's new clothes, the grandchildren's silence, the strange tone of the call. It all pointed to a truth I was trying to hide. But the truth can't be hidden for long. I called the restaurant and pretended I wanted to reserve a table. The waitress was friendly and said, "We have a large group of Silva family members today." That was it. The lie was confirmed with a single sentence, and the pain hit me hard, like a punch in the stomach. I put on my best coat, took a deep breath, and left. Heart racing, I arrived at the restaurant. I saw the parked cars. It was real. And although my hands were shaking, I walked in with determination. The hostess didn't hesitate. She led me directly to my reserved table. They were there, my son, my daughter-in-law, my grandchildren, my cousin from out of town. They were all laughing and celebrating. When they saw me, they stopped laughing. An awkward silence fell, and there I was, asking the unnecessary question. Dinner canceled? My son tried to hide it. His daughter-in-law looked away. One of the grandsons blushed in embarrassment. And me? I stood my ground. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just looked. And in that look lay everything words couldn't express. They knew it, and they knew I knew it. I left the restaurant without making a fuss, but something inside me broke, and at the same time rebuilt itself. For the first time, I understood that I no longer had to force myself to be accepted. If there wasn't a place at the table, I would create my own. What struck me most about that dinner wasn't the cake or the surprised faces. It was the look on my oldest grandson's face. He saw me, not as an annoying old woman, but as someone who had been treated unfairly. And in that moment, I realized that perhaps there was still hope, not in reconciliation with everyone, but in breaking this vicious cycle for future generations. I came home, sat on the couch, and looked around. Everything breathed the past. The house where I raised my children and loved my husband was just a memory of what was no longer there. I decided it was time to leave, and this time for myself. The next day, I called a real estate agent. "I want to sell," I said firmly. At the same time, I contacted a lawyer. I rewrote my will, eliminating names out of necessity and including those who had treated me with respect, even if they weren't blood relatives. Part of the house's value was allocated to a social project. The rest went to my new home. No more leaving my fortune as emotional bait. My children would learn that love isn't an inheritance, it's a presence. And absence has its price. This decision gave me back something valuable: control. For the first time, I was the sole decision maker, without blackmail, without guilt, without fear. And for someone who has spent her entire life trying to please others, this is a quiet but powerful revolution. I moved into a small but lively apartment. From the balcony, I overlooked a square filled with children's laughter, sounds I hadn't heard in years. I took only the essentials: my books, a few photos, and my newfound freedom. I discovered the local public library and, curious, went. I had a job organizing children's books. I soon became a volunteer. The children listened attentively and asked for more stories. There, among the shelves and the soft voices, I felt I was still needed. I met incredible people. A man who wrote poetry, a girl who cared for her grandparents, completely normal people, but with a humanity that slowly healed me. No one wanted anything from me except my company. That was new and precious. I started smiling effortlessly again. I started taking care of myself, reading more, and even reading books like The Little Prince to a shy boy who later brought me a drawing as a thank you. In simplicity, I found what the size of the family could never give me: genuine affection. I suggested that the library create a special corner, a children's section in honor of Antonio. He always believed in the power of books. Thus was born the Antonio Reading Room, with colorful cushions, rugs, and new books for the children to enjoy. I didn't do it to show off. I did it because I wanted to leave something with soul. No more inheritances that divide families, but legacies that enrich lives. And I realized that the greatest reward wasn't the applause, but the radiant looks around me. I organized events, collected books, and told stories. Ordinary people came together, and the place became a refuge for many children. There, I felt part of something beautiful. I was alive, useful, and for the first time in a long time, happy. My children found out about the project and called, somewhat surprised. They asked me why I hadn't told them. I calmly replied, "Because this time, I didn't do it for you. I did it for myself and for what I still believe in." It was the most relaxed conversation we've ever had. I've learned that love that only arises when it's right isn't love at all. It's a strategy. For a long time, I accepted little because I thought it was too much. But there comes a time when dignity becomes stronger than the fear of loneliness. Today, I no longer beg for attention. I don't accept crumbs. And, above all, I've realized that old age isn't a punishment. It's an opportunity for rebirth. The freedom I've found at 78 has a flavor that not even the recognition of my family could give me. To this day, my son tries to justify himself. I listen, but I won't give in. Because respect isn't something you beg for, it's something you demand with attitude. And if it doesn't come, we drift apart. Choosing oneself can hurt, but refusing hurts even more. Today, I only stay where I'm welcome. I only connect with those who truly understand me. Dependency, guilt, and fear are left behind. What remains is peace. And one thing is certain: it's never too late to feel whole, even after so many defeats. Dignity isn't lost suddenly, it's lost little by little. In a joke that hurts, but you laugh at it. In an unfair request that you accept. In an invitation that never comes and you pretend you don't care. But in the end, we wake up and we understand that a life with less, surrounded by truth, is worth more than a life full of people who only want to control us. During this time, we learn to say no without guilt, to walk away without anger, to set boundaries without having to justify ourselves. Because true love doesn't demand constant sacrifice, but reciprocity. And where there is no exchange, there is slavery. And I wasn't born to serve. I was born to live. And you know what the best part is? Realizing I don't have to prove anything to anyone. I don't have to justify my decisions or demand respect. What I achieved was more than freedom, peace. A peace that only comes when we close the right doors and open the right windows to our inner selves. How many times have you repressed your pain just to keep the peace? How many times have you relegated yourself to the background because you thought it was love? This story isn't just mine. It could be yours, your neighbor's, your mother's. But there's one truth no one has told you. Respect has no age, and dignity has no expiration date. Whether you're 30 or 80, there's always time to make decisions, to end the pain and make way for healing. What have you endured out of habit? Don't you deserve more than to live on the fringes of other people's lives? If this story moved you, stirred memories, or gave you courage, don't miss it. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you would do if you were in my shoes. And of course, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay tuned. Here, each story is a mirror and perhaps a new opportunity to start over. And remember, it's never too late to be completely happy. You're not alone. And maybe your next step will be the one worthwhile.